Years ago, I found myself at the theater for a much-anticipated show, seated in the fourth row, right in the heart of the action. I'd bought tickets for my husband and me months in advance, so we were all set for a memorable evening. However, life took an unexpected turn when I discovered that my adult son was suddenly available that night and interested in joining us. I swiftly tried to secure another ticket, but prices had skyrocketed in the meantime, and the theater was nearly fully booked. Luckily, I managed to snag a pricey solo seat just 4 spots away from ours. My son was perfectly fine with sitting on his own, but I thought it would be nice if we could all enjoy the show together, even if it meant a minor reshuffling. On the night of the play, we arrived 20 minutes before curtain time, and as we approached our designated seats, I decided to politely ask the nearby theatergoers if they wouldn't mind moving 2 spots down to accommodate my son. In my mind, it was a reasonable request to enhance the overall experience for everyone. However, the response I received was nothing short of bewildering. The 4 individuals in question gazed at us as though we had requested something truly outrageous. Their silence was deafening, and not a single word left their lips. I was taken aback by their reluctance to extend a simple act of generosity, but I respected their decision and refrained from pursuing it further. My husband and I settled into our assigned seats, right in the middle of the row, with my son situated on the other side of this peculiar quartet. However, as the performance got underway, something interesting began to unfold. I realized that these indifferent theatergoers were actually 2 separate couples. The first couple, Couple A, seated right next to us, continued to pay no attention to our presence, as if we were invisible. They remained committed to their silent stance. Couple B, on the other hand, located a bit further from the center and right next to my son, were gradually coming to terms with the fact that they might have missed out on a prime spot when a fairly tall gentleman settled in front of one of them. With my offer still hanging in the air and a clear opportunity to rectify their situation, they inexplicably chose not to seize it. As the show progressed, my son still had 2 unclaimed seats next to him. Ordinarily, it's customary to wait until intermission to swap seats, provided no one else has claimed them. In the world of theater seating etiquette, it's a sort of unspoken agreement to ensure a smooth transition, even though no one technically owns any specific seat. As the first act came to a close, I couldn't help but notice that the 2 adjacent seats were still vacant. Most audience members follow the intermission rule, waiting for that specific window to change seats if they so desire. That's just how things work. So, as soon as the curtain dropped for intermission and the row was finally accessible, my husband and I laid down our jackets across the 2 empty seats next to my son, as if to declare our territory. Our new location provided us with 3 seats together, with 2 unclaimed seats by the aisle. In a plot twist, 2 friendly and somewhat bashful 20-somethings approached us, their eyes reflecting uncertainty. They had decided to migrate from their less-than-stellar balcony seats and were concerned about encroaching on our spot. I reassured them that it was entirely acceptable, and they eagerly accepted our offer. At the same time, I noticed mean couple B observing our shift with growing frustration, likely regretting not seizing the opportunity they had at the start of the show. I didn't want any of these mean-spirited individuals to end up with better seats than they had initially. To make things right, I turned to the 20-somethings and made them an offer they couldn't refuse, seats right in the center. Our abandoned spots provided them with a significant upgrade, and they expressed their gratitude for the kind gesture, moving past both mean couples on their way. Mean couple B shot me a dirty look, but at that moment, I couldn't have cared less. My husband was a bit bewildered by my pettiness, but it felt entirely worth it to ensure that generosity prevailed.
In the year 2000, during my freshman year of high school, I was navigating the complex world of adolescence. Back then, I was as broke as a joke, always on the hunt for any spare change I could find. I'd scavenge through the long-forgotten coin returns of payphones, and I'd scour beneath and behind vending machines. I had a penchant for quirky behaviors, like wearing heavy coats and sweatshirts even when the weather didn't call for it. You see, I was on the autism spectrum, and my Ritalin prescription had a profound impact on my behavior. It could make me quiet, aloof, and zoned out one moment and a complete chatterbox the next. So, naturally, I was an easy target for bullies. My peculiar fascination with wandering had me exploring our high school campus before the school day officially began. One morning, my watchful eyes caught sight of a nickel tantalizingly gleaming on the other side of a small wire-fenced area that concealed some kind of power junction line. I was determined to add that nickel to my collection of spare change, so I scavenged around until I found a stick to slide it closer to me. The problem was that a group of kids noticed my scavenger hunt and found it amusing. They saw me as a strange, coin-collecting oddball and couldn't resist taunting me. But I paid them no mind. However, a few days later, these same tormentors decided to take their mockery a step further. They started pelting me with pennies. I reacted differently this time. I remained silent and collected every single penny they threw, methodically pocketing each one. They found this even more hilarious and continued their coin-flinging assault over the next few days. And, like clockwork, I diligently retrieved every single penny they cast in my direction. There were hundreds of them, amounting to less than $5. It may not have been a fortune, but it was a contribution to my savings. You see, I maintained a large jar where I stored any spare change I could find. Fast forward to the following week, and one of the guys from that group approached me, not to taunt, but to ask for the pennies back. My response was a resounding no. He persisted, revealing that he had taken those pennies from his mom's penny jar, and she had noticed their absence. He pleaded with me to return the coins. I maintained my stance. I informed him that, firstly, I didn't have those pennies on me, and secondly, he had no right to request them back, considering he had chucked them at me in the first place. With my point made, I walked away. Unsurprisingly, that guy never bothered me again. However, one of his friends did, but the underlying lesson was learned. The guy who had sought the pennies claimed he got in trouble for my refusal to return them, but his punishment wasn't something I cared about. Those pennies, in the end, proved more valuable than their face value. They helped me purchase my next N64 game from the used video game store, and I couldn't help but feel that it was a small but sweet victory against those bullies.
I was running errands and needed to refuel my car, so I pulled into a gas station owned by Mart. Since I had a membership that did not require me to leave the car, I was glad to avoid the hassle of going inside. Here's where things get interesting. My car is a Volvo, with a gas tank on the passenger side, unlike most cars. I pulled up to a pump at the gas station, which was typically bustling during the daytime. The station sat on a busy road leading in and out of town, with cars coming and going constantly. I noticed someone at a pump, finishing up. The cars were facing the opposite way, as their gas tanks were on the driver's side. This particular driver wrapped up, and I noticed the pump behind them was also available. There was only one car, a red van, waiting behind the open pump. I decided to let both of them pass, allowing the van to pull up first to avoid getting stuck between me and the car in front. Unbeknownst to me, the red van harbored a Karen. As I awaited my turn, the van suddenly pulled all the way up, occupying the pump I intended to use. I politely honked my horn, thinking the driver might not have seen me and that I wanted to leave space behind the other vehicle. Little did I know that I was about to face off with a Karen. Thinking she hadn't heard me the first time, I honked again, just a short, polite beep. The woman, who I would soon learn was a certified Karen, shot me a disdainful glance over her shoulder and began to exit her van. So, I rolled my window down and poked my head out for a brief interaction. Excuse me, ma'am, can you back up? Karen, dismissive, just go around. I can't, my gas tank is on the other side. Karen, exasperated and rude. I don't back up for anyone. Fine, I thought, let's play it your way. Making sure there was no line forming behind her, I inched my car as close as possible to the pump, blocking her in while still allowing room for cars to pass behind me. After about a minute, a pickup truck pulled up behind the Karen's van, but he had finished in no time. The Karen, on the other hand, was taking her sweet time. Only when Karen got back into her van did she realize how I had positioned myself. The truck driver, having completed his fill-up, backed out and cleared her path. Karen cast a seething glare in my direction and parked her van, waiting. At this point, I was parked and had turned off my car. I wasn't in a hurry and had all the time in the world to outlast this grumpy individual. After another minute or so, she gave up, got out, and approached my window. I rolled it down slightly, giving her the opportunity to ask me to move. "Sorry, ma'am, I don't back up," I calmly replied, then turned my attention back to my entertainment, watching an episode of r/Greetings to Hugo from me. Clearly frustrated, she stomped back to her van and slowly reversed out of the space. I proceeded to fill up my tank with a triumphant grin and a compelling story to share. When my parents first moved into the neighborhood, they encountered a homeowners association, HOA, that seemed like it was there to take care of the community. At least, that's what they thought initially. They paid their dues, hoping for some benefits in return. However, the reality was far from what they expected. This was back in 2000. I was just a young child, and my older sibling was a toddler. Our family had recently settled in a new home. The neighborhood had an HOA that promised services, like snow removal and trash collection. So my parents figured they were getting value for their money. In reality, the HOA wasn't delivering on its promises. The city handled snowplowing and trash collection, not the HOA. But there was a silver lining to their membership, or so it seemed. The HOA decided to plant trees throughout the neighborhood, which gave residents hope that the association was finally contributing positively. Little did we know, those trees would be the catalyst for change. The tree planting event is where it all started to unravel. As my parents observed, it became clear that the people planting the trees were not doing the job properly. The saplings were dropped onto the ground, still in their bags, with no holes dug for planting. My grandmother, a certified master gardener, was visiting and couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Those saplings lay there, untouched, overnight. But no one came back to rectify their mistake. This is where my mother's frustration kicked in. She realized that she was paying the HOA for services they weren't providing. As a hardworking parent, she wanted her money's worth. She approached the HOA head, who was also the son of the tree planting company owner, and demanded that the saplings be planted properly. The trees were dying, and she was determined to ensure her money wasn't going to waste. The HOA head's suggestion? Join the HOA yourself. This was the moment when my mother decided to take matters into her own hands. First, she attended the next HOA meeting, which had very few participants. It was clear that the HOA was in dire need of more members, and my mother's commitment was just what they required. Little did they know, they had made a crucial mistake by inviting her in. As an outsider, my mother took a closer look at the HOA's operations and realized they did virtually nothing to benefit the community. All the claims of their work were exaggerated or simply false. To make matters worse, they were operating outside their designated area. It was time for my mother to take action. She spent the entire summer researching and gathering evidence. With me, her young child, in tow, she sifted through years of paperwork. Her investigation revealed that the HOA was running a scam. They were collecting funds from the residents of the neighborhood, falsely promising services that were either provided by homeowners themselves or by the city. To rectify this, my mother went door to door with pamphlets, explaining the situation and how residents could stop paying for services they'd never receive. The pamphlets were available in both English and Spanish to cater to the diverse community. Additionally, she hired a lawyer and an accountant to help build a strong case. While this cost her a significant amount, it was an investment to protect the community from further exploitation. With the support of another HOA member who was equally passionate about the cause, they distributed pamphlets, gathered residents, and exposed the fraud. They took their case to the courthouse, armed with substantial evidence. The result was a victory for our neighborhood. The HOA was removed, and the scammers exposed. It's been nearly 2 decades, and no other HOA has dared to establish itself in our community since.